This is Jeremy Ravinsky, and welcome to NPC's Legal Analysis of the News. Today, I'd like to talk about the recent debate, the presidential debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. There was obviously a lot of feedback on Twitter and different social media sites after the debate. I just happened to find one comment that I thought was quite interesting. As we know, the debate platform had only two participants: Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, and Hillary Clinton, the Democrat nominee. Why was that? Was there some sort of understanding with the commission that only allowed two candidates? Weren't there other candidates also running for president that might have wanted to be on that stage? Well, in fact, there were. As you see from recent polls, there were really four candidates, aside from the giant meteor hitting the Earth on the bottom left. I don't think there's anybody running for president called that. But there were four candidates that were polling above 1%. Trump and Clinton obviously polling well above 30, 40%. And then Gary Johnson, the Libertarian nominee, polling somewhere around 10%, and Jill Stein, the Green Party nominee, polling somewhere around 3 to 5%. You can imagine that Johnson and Stein were not happy when they were told that they were not invited to participate in the recent debate. Both campaigns had started movements on social media and in other places, rallying, telling people, get behind us, we should be able to debate. Why is it that we're not able to debate? You see on the left hand side, Gary Johnson's campaign started a whole hashtag movement on social media, let Gary debate. They were sending out emails and posts and trying to raise a lot of money and raise awareness. On the right hand side, we see Jill Stein's campaign. People showed up at the first debate. She showed up at the first debate, and they were escorted out by police. Some of them arrested for refusing to listen, for occupying the debates. So neither one of these individuals or their campaigns were happy. Both of them were trying to make it so that they had a place in the debate as well. So why was it that in the end they didn't get a place? Well, as you see on your screen, the Commission on Presidential Debates is the official organization that organizes the debates and invites the candidates. This is where we get into the real legal nitty gritty. As you see on your screen, the commission is a private, nonpartisan 501c3 organization. And the part that I highlighted for you from their website says that for this debate season, for this presidential season, a candidate to be invited has to be constitutionally eligible, right? Everything the Constitution says. They have to be old enough and born in America, etc., etc. Candidates must appear on a sufficient number of state ballots to have a chance numerically of winning a majority in the Electoral College. They have had to have a level of support of at least 15% in the recent polls, the five big public opinion polls, when they average together. And this 15% is really what led only Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton to receive invitations to debate. So, as you see on your screen, there was a lot of discord about the results, about when they announced that only Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump would be allowed to participate in the first debate. And, of course, what the campaigns decided to do is Jill Stein's campaign and Gary Johnson's campaign worked together to file a lawsuit against the Commission on Presidential Debates, asking asking a judge to rule, to make an injunction forcing the commission to also allow these candidates to express themselves and have a podium at the debate as well. What I want to do is look at what happened, because they ended up filing a lawsuit, and very recently the judge handling this case dismissed the lawsuit that was filed by Gary Johnson and Jill Stein. As you see on your screen, the judge rejected their suit against the debate commission, allowing the commission to keep to its original terms of everything, including the 15% benchmark in the polls. And since Jill Stein and Gary Johnson did not meet that mark, as close as they might have been, the judge said that it was within the power of the commission to exclude them from the first debate. Now, you see on your screen the actual decision from the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. This is the court where they filed the lawsuit. And you see on the top, Gary Johnson et al., meaning there are other parties as well, as I mentioned to you, versus the Commission on Presidential Debates et al. Fine. All right. Well, the opinion said that these candidates, the Libertarian and Green Party candidates, sought and failed to receive invitations to the privately sponsored presidential debates in 2012, and now they seek the 2016 invitations. However, the court says right at the beginning, because plaintiffs have no standing and because antitrust laws govern commercial markets and not political activity, those claims fail as a matter of well-established law. The opinion goes on at the very beginning to say plaintiffs also allege violations of the First Amendment, but those claims must be dismissed because the First Amendment guarantees freedom from government infringement, and defendants here are private parties. So this is really what I want to focus on, going through the most important parts of this decision, or perhaps the fundamental parts of this decision, in order for us to better understand how we got to where we got to. You see on the screen the complaint from these campaigns set forth. Really, they separated them to 4 counts. Counts 1 and 2 talked about the Sherman Act, which is an antitrust violation. Count 3 talked about the First Amendment, free speech and association rights. And count 4 talked about intentional infringement or interference with prospective economic advantage and relations, which is a torts claim that we're not really going to touch because the court really didn't touch it. The court basically at the end said they assert this, here are the elements for this tort, but they didn't really respond to the other side, and therefore we're just going to throw this out because it's not a real serious count here. So moving forward, the first thing, as you know if you've taken constitutional law, is that we have to establish standing. So the plaintiff has to establish that he's suffered an injury in fact that is concrete and particularized and actual or imminent, right? Not just hypothetical, and the injury is fairly traceable to the challenged actions of the defendant. And finally, it's likely that the injury can be redressed if the court decides in the plaintiff's favor. So here, the court says that there's really no standing here because plaintiff's injuries, they say, are wholly speculative and dependent entirely on media coverage decisions. What the plaintiffs alleged was that if they were going to be excluded from the debates, it would be, quote, an electoral death sentence, end quote. And by the commission keeping them out, it's basically impossible for them to be taken seriously as mainstream candidates. And people will say, oh, well, I watched the debate. I see only 2 people on screen. Therefore, I have to just choose between one of the 2. And they say that should be that's unfair. That should be an antitrust violation, that these 2 parties working with the commission are colluding to keep out other voices or other parties. Parenthetically, not only did they sue the commission, but some of the other defendants listed on there were the other parties, the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, etc. And as the court says, as you see, plaintiffs' alleged injuries are wholly speculative and are dependent entirely on media coverage decisions. The alleged injuries, failure to receive media coverage and to garner votes, federal matching funds, and campaign contributions were not caused by the commission or the other parties, but they said they were caused by the candidates themselves. Lack of popular support of the candidates and their parties sufficient to attract media attention. The court goes on to say, it's obvious that defendants did not cause plaintiffs' alleged harms when the sequence of events is examined. Plaintiffs' injuries occurred before defendants failed to invite them to participate in the debates, even in 2012, because the lack of an invitation was not random. They just didn't say, I don't like this person's policies, that's why I'm not inviting them. They said it was due to the plaintiff's failure to satisfy the 15% rule. They didn't get 15% of the polls. They didn't get sufficient popular support. court. So the court says that plaintiffs have not alleged a concrete injury that's traceable to the commission. If anything, they should be maybe suing the American public for not supporting them. I don't know. And thus they lack standing. Okay. For the antitrust violations, and quoting the Sherman Act, the candidates were claiming, the plaintiffs were claiming that they were harmed through a loss of publicity, campaign contributions, and salaries that the individual candidate plaintiffs would have received as president or vice president. They say that the commission and the mainstream candidates colluded to keep them out, to prevent them from achieving these things, from getting these things. Now, the court says here that even if that is true, you can't rely on antitrust violation law to rectify this problem, or to ask a court to rectify this problem. It says the antitrust laws, as you see, should not regulate political activities simply because those activities have a commercial impact. The antitrust laws are for commercial activity, when two corporations come together to do something unfair, to keep out another competitor from engaging them in the marketplace. But the Sherman Act expressly applies only to restraints of trade or commerce, and not to political activity. That was not the intention of Congress in passing the Sherman Act. And finally, moving on to the First Amendment claims. The plaintiffs argued this isn't fair. There's a First Amendment right to free speech and free association, right? Everybody knows that. So how could it be that you're excluding our voices, you're excluding our campaigns? And here the court is very clear. As one of the main things, one of the first things we learn in constitutional law, it's fundamental that the First Amendment binds only government action, right? The Constitution is written as a restraint on government. It doesn't restrain private entities in the same way, and it does not apply to actions of private persons or entities. And therefore, because the commission, as we saw, is a private 501c3, and it's just providing a public service in inviting these candidates who have hit the 15% mark to come debate on national TV, just because it's providing a service that's beneficial for the public to make up their minds about who should be the next president, it doesn't make the Commission on Presidential Debates a government actor. As you see, the fact that defendants serve the public by coordinating presidential debates does not make their actions state action for purpose of the First Amendment. And therefore, what this means is that the protections from the Bill of Rights and other areas of the Constitution will not apply to restrain a private entity from acting in a way that if the government was doing the same thing, they might have had a case against it. It won't work here. And since the Commission is a private 501c3 and not a branch of the government, it has all the right in the world, the court says, to exclude these people who do not hit the 15% mark and only provide invitations to the other candidates that meet that mark. And so the first debate concluded with only two candidates on stage. And as you see on your screen, the next presidential debate is already coming up, October 9th. Gary Johnson very publicly is vowing to keep fighting, vowing to try to get his numbers up there, to hit the 15% mark, to get a third podium on the debate stage. Will he be in the next debate? We don't know. But thank you so much for watching, and it will surely be interesting to see what will happen. For NPC Legal Analysis, the news, this is Jeremy Ravinsky.